Welcome to the Proposal Development and Navigating Federal Granting Agencies Workshop. My name is Jaclyn Shaw. I work for the Office for Research and the Office of Research Support. I'm a Faculty Development Coordinator. The co-facilitator today for this workshop is Raquel Shrager.
Hi there, I am the Research Program Coordinator in the Office for Research Support with Jaclyn. I help with all the interdisciplinary research initiatives and limited submissions.
Okay, so before we get started and discuss objectives today, I just want to show this quote that comes from the Social Sciences Research Council, and it talks about, in all probability, the quality of science of the applications in the 10% below the cutoff for funding agencies is not significantly different from that in the 10% just above the cutoff. So in other words, what this is saying is that the margin between those who are funded and those who are not funded is so small that the small details count. And that's where grantsmanship comes in. And today we're going to go over that along with some technical points that need to be remembered when you're putting together a proposal, regardless of it being a federal or a private funding agency. Okay, so the objectives today, we have 3 of them. One of them is to go over the planning process behind getting ready to submit a grant proposal. The second is going to be the actual proposal development and all of the criteria that needs to be included in a grant proposal. And third, we're going to discuss the peer review process, which is very important to understand when you're putting a proposal together, because that determines how responsive you're going to be to the proposal's requirements. And what we're going to show you first is Pivot. Pivot is a web-based tool that the University of Texas at San Antonio contracts with. And I'm going to let Raquel tell you a little bit more about Pivot.
So the University of Texas San Antonio has an account with the Community of Science. And the Pivot tool is what we use to find opportunities that are available. We can, how do I do this? Oh, I'm sorry. We can find Pivot in several different places on the research website. This one is actually in the limited submission website. And the Pivot tool is limited submission opportunities. And you can click here to see the full list of limited submission opportunities. You can actually set this up, Jaclyn or myself can help you set your Pivot up, and you can filter it however you like. That way you're not getting too many opportunities, but you're getting them focused on your research or agency or however you like. This particular one is focused only on limited submissions. I have it filtered to give me every single limited submission opportunity out there. So you'll see this is interdisciplinary. It's for all, it goes across colleges. It gives me every single limited submission opportunity. Like I said, UTSA has their own account. So when you set this up, you'll have to use the University of San Antonio's account, and you'll just set up your own profile. And then that way it will actually email you opportunities as they become available.
And, you know, there's several ways, like she said. One, you can go through the limited submission website to sign up. 2, if you look on the slide within this PowerPoint, there's actually a link that'll take you right to it, and you can go and you can sign up. And thirdly, you can always call the Office for Research and ask for Raquel or I, and we can help you set up your account. And for those of you that may not know about limited submission is when, actually, I think we have a slide.
So you want to go back to. So limited submission opportunities are those that are limited by the agency. Sometimes agencies will limit the number. Sometimes it's 1. They'll accept 1 from a particular institution. Sometimes they'll have 1 from each college. Anytime an opportunity is limited, it has to go through an internal review process here at UTSA.
Okay. And then one other way of finding funding opportunities we want to show you is not only can you go through Pivot, but you can also go directly to the federal agencies or foundation websites. They usually have a link to grant funding, funding opportunities, and you usually can get a list of everything that's open and current and that you're able to apply for. Deadlines with grants are varied. They can range from 30 days to 6 months. So it's very important that you keep your eyes opened and that you search for federal and private sector funding opportunities constantly, especially if you need funding to keep your research going. Up here we have the page for grants.gov, which is where all federal funding opportunities are posted. National Science Foundation and NIH, National Institutes of Health, but almost every federal and private foundation funding source is posted on their webpage.
Can I add something? There is a new trend that I've noticed lately. NSF will actually send me, because I've set up my NSF so they can send me announcements as they become available. They're actually inviting you to webinars that way too. So before they actually put out the announcement, they're inviting you to attend webinars to discuss some of the things that they're going to be asking for once the announcement comes out, some of the requirements. It's really important. So if you do register for NSF or NIH to be notified of opportunities, make sure you pay attention to those webinar opportunities as well.
Okay. So let's move into the planning process of writing a grant proposal. Usually, in almost all cases, there's going to be a request for proposal or a request for funding announcement. It's some type of document that lists out what the funding agency is looking for, what the criteria is that you have to put in your grant, and it'll talk about funding limits and eligibility criteria. As far as eligibility goes, it's very important that you read it. That's where you might see if it's a limited submission opportunity. You might see if you're an academic institution, if you're eligible. So the RFP or the RFA is very, very important. It'll also give you information what they're looking for as far as the mission of the agency goes. It'll tell you who the contacting person is at the organization. And it's very important that you read through this from beginning to end. And I know I always read through it several times because the smallest details can disqualify you from a funding award. So it's very important that you read it from beginning to end. And it's also a very good thing for you to reach out to someone else within your organization or another colleague that's actually applied for this particular funding announcement, or maybe for another one from that same funding agency. And it doesn't hurt to reach out to the contacting person within that granting agency, and we'll talk a little bit more about that. Okay, so research service centers. Here at the University of Texas at San Antonio, a researcher can't just apply for a grant on their own. They have to go through a process that's set up, and most universities have this in place. And it's because once a grant is awarded, there's responsibility not only to the researcher, but also to the institution. So the research service centers are where here at UTSA, a researcher or staff member can go and apply for a grant. And the core functions of these research service centers, which fall underneath the Vice President for Research, they're actually the Office of Sponsored Programs Administration, is there to assist with proposal development, not to write your grant for you, but to actually help you making sure that it's meeting all of the criteria that they're looking for, that you're responsive to the RFP. They help with award negotiation and acceptance if you are awarded a grant. They do award setup, and they have award administration. They manage, they monitor, and they help you report. And then they also help with the award closeout. So they're a great benefit to any researcher, any department, or any college when it comes time to apply for a grant, and especially once you're awarded.
They do need, each RSC, I believe, has their own time period that they need to review grants or proposals before they go out. I think it's usually about 5 days. It's important to stay in touch with them and really work with them when you are working on a proposal. They're going to catch important things like cost sharing, institutional support, anything that might be a hang-up or a roadblock later, they'll identify up front. So it's important to really talk to them about what you're proposing.
Okay, and so here are the 6 research service center directors. There are actually 6 research service centers. There's one for the downtown campus. Jean Cody, she's responsible to the College of Architecture and the College of Public Policy. Then there's Juliet Ray, she's over the College of Education and Human Development. Then there's Kirsten Wilsey, she's the RSC Director for Engineering, and she's actually the interim
Director for Sciences.
right.
And that's a temporary fix until we get a new director. They're working on that now.
And then Mario Medina, he is the Research Service Center Director for Economic Development. And then Jennifer Silver for Liberal and Fine Arts, and she also covers the College of Business and the Honors College. So these representatives are there every day of the week to help researchers apply and manage grant awards once they're received. Okay, so now we're going to move from the planning process to the actual proposal development stages. Once you've done all of your planning, you know what you're going to apply for, what your research is, you found an opportunity that is a perfect fit, you're eligible, your institution's eligible, and the missions match the mission of your research with the mission of that funding agency. Now it's time to begin proposal development. And every single grant proposal that you write, there's going to be basic components that are the same across the board, whether it's for social sciences, humanities, engineering, life, or physical sciences, it doesn't matter. Components of a grant usually remain the same. And one of the things that we're going to do today is go over those 8 main components, starting with the abstract. So an abstract is usually anywhere from a half of a page to maybe a full page, but it describes your research with your objectives, what you plan to do, and you really have to summarize this in a very short way, and like I said, half a page to a page. But this is your first impression. When you submit your grant, it's going to be one of the first things that are read by the peer review and also the funding agency. So really the abstract is a very critical component of your grant proposal.
And the abstract should be succinct, and it should be in layperson's terms. It should be very easy to read. That is going to be a very important piece. If somebody starts to read that and they can't muddle through it, it's going to be triaged before anything else. They're not going to go any further. So make sure it's distinct, make sure it's in layperson, make sure it's something that they understand, it's easy to read.
Okay, and so the second part of proposal development is you're going to have a description of your organization, yourself, your key members of your grant proposal, and this is done so that the funding agency knows that you're a credible organization that has the experience, the expertise, the background to actually carry through if they fund you. And this is very critical because they're giving money to your institution to complete an end goal. And if you don't have all of the resources and manpower necessary to complete it, they see it as a risk and they may not decide to fund your proposal. So it's very important that you have all of these details included when it's especially asked for by the funding agency. And some of the ways that you can do this is a brief biography of university leadership. And university leadership and key faculty members and the principal investigator, it just really depends what the proposal's asking for or the RFP's asking for. However, it can be a description all the way from the president down to the department chair over to the PI and every team member that they're going to have on the project. That's where you have to read the RFP and figure out what the best way to describe your applicant organization and partner organizations. You're going to have to talk about your organization's goals and research mission because the funding agency wants to know that your missions of your institution, it would be UTSA in our case, aligns with what their funding agency is looking for, be it NSF or NIH or Department of Education. You want to make that alignment to show that you're both trying to achieve some of the same research goals. And then a key management plan is very important. A key management plan is the PI. They want to see that the PI, the principal investigator, has all the things in place that they need, the background, the labs, the manpower, the resources to actually follow through with the project proposal. And then, of course, this all is for establishing credibility and the ability to carry through.
I do have a couple of things to add here. Jaclyn and I are working on boilerplates, for lack of a better term, This is going to be institutional data. Maybe it'll be about our status as a Hispanic serving institution. Maybe it's about the square footage in particular labs, equipment, facilities, our veterinary plan for those that have IACUC protocols, resource sharing, all of those types of things. We are working on boilerplates. We'll have those resources available to you. So each time you are writing, you don't have to recreate the wheel. And that should be available very soon. And we'll keep you updated.
Okay. And so a third component that every grant proposal is going to need is a problem statement or a needs assessment. And this is where you're telling the funding agency what it is that you're trying to achieve. And it can be solving a scientific problem. It can be advancing a field of research. And it can be all the way down to helping a population. It depends on what type of subject matter you're working in and what federal agency you're writing to. But it's very important that you establish that because they want to see what the core goal is and what you're planning to change if they fund you. They want some significant outcome at the end. It should always relate to purpose and objectives. You want to make sure when you do write your problem statement or your needs assessment that you have data, statistical evidence that shows that what you're proposing, that there is reference out there that this problem or this issue exists. You also want to show that it's a statement of broad impact of study. You'll see those words, especially in NIH and NSF. They want to see that it's a broad impact of study. And they want to see that you have a knowledge of your target group, be it a population or something scientific or technological. They want to see that you have the knowledge and the background behind it. And then once you set up your needs assessment or your problem statement, you're going to want to show SMART objectives. SMART objectives are really, really important to grant proposals. They show that your statement of work, exactly what you plan to accomplish. You need to make sure that it's measurable and it's observable, that it's achievable, that it's realistic and time-bound. These are very important because if you don't have all of these elements in your SMART objectives, they're going to see that you may not have a clear plan of how you're going to achieve your end goal. And I have a few examples below of ways that you can do this. You can use words such as increased, decreased, enhanced, improved. It's very important that you use action verbs. And you also want to show how you're going to do this, how you're going to collect and analyze your data and information. And on the next slide, I have an example, and it's a very strong example of a SMART objective. And so if your goal is to increase the number of people in public health informatics who are from a minority group or vulnerable population, an example of a SMART objective is from August 2008 to 2009, establish recruitment initiatives at historically black colleges and other minority institutions in conjunction with the training initiatives of national partner organizations. So you can see here that it's very smart and it's very clear that it's time-bound. You can see that it's given a time frame in which this is going to happen. It's measurable and achievable, and it's actually realistic. And then it goes on at the very end and it shows exactly who those partner organizations are that they're going to reach out to. So if you go online and you search SMART objectives, there's tons of information out there on how you can write even out to the specific agency. So you can find examples of SMART objectives that have been written to NIH or NSF or even been written by the organizations themselves. Okay. So the next part of proposal development is methods and design. So you know what your need is or your problem statement is. You have your objectives, what you plan to achieve, but now you need to be able to tell the funding agency how you're going to do it. And this is important as well. It's actually how you're going to execute your research proposal. And this is where you have proposed subjects. You tell what instruments you're going to use, the conditions under which the research is going to be conducted, and how you propose to analyze the data In federal proposals, data is very important, not only in your proposal, but how you're going to collect data after you've been awarded the funding and report it back to the funding agency. So, but in your proposal, your grant proposal, some of the ways that you can do this is through flow charts, milestone tables, and logic models. And those are some of those boilerplates that Raquel and I are keeping on file at the Office for Research. So if you're interested in those or want to see what those look like, you can reach out to us, and our contact information is at the end.
I wanted to mention that some of these larger programs, they actually have, or they have resources of their own. Maybe the program actually provides funding for particular other smaller programs that collect this data and manage data, and it might look really, really good, and the program officer might require that you use that particular avenue for collecting data and sharing data. Please, when you find an opportunity or an announcement, look into that program and see if they have other programs that they use to mine that data.
And some of the funding agencies have workshops and webinars that you can watch and learn and show techniques that they preference. Okay, so monitoring and evaluation. So you've developed your needs statement. You've discussed your problem that you're trying to address. You have your objectives. You've told the granting agency how you're going to achieve your goals and objectives. And now you're going to have to tell the funding agency how you plan on monitoring and evaluating your progress. And this is something that's becoming more and more prevalent in requests for proposals through almost all funding agencies. And this is really where they're watching, and they want to see how you're progressing and if you are achieving your goals. They want to see the end results and the outcomes. Some of the questions that monitoring and evaluation asks is, what interventions make a difference? You may propose something, and at the end of the day, what you proposed may not work, but that's still a contribution to science. So, but you need to be able to monitor that progress and justify your end result. It could ask, is the project reached planned milestones? That goes back to if you have a milestone table and you say, in Q1 you're going to achieve X, and Q2 you're going to achieve Y, and Q3 you're going to achieve Z. So this milestone table is something, it's another way of evaluating and monitoring progress. And has your project reached its intended results? Really, that is the main question that they're going to want answered. And there's multiple ways that you can do that. It always goes back to those SMART objectives. If you write them in a consistent manner and you write them as SMART objectives, you'll be able to measure them and you'll be able to monitor the end result. Some of the ways or considerations that you should keep in mind when telling the funding agency how you're going to monitor and evaluate your research, you can make them qualitative or quantitative. Everything doesn't always have to be numeric. It can be qualitative. You can pre-plan data collection methods, be it you have somebody else at the university help you collect data and process it. It can be hand collection of data, or it can be computerized, or you can use some type of technology. But those are all things that you should plan and spell out in your grant proposal. And then you can also tell your funding agency, if they don't tell you in the RFP, are you going to do a mid-project or just an end-project evaluation? So these are all things that you will see within the RFP, and you will have to be prepared to include in your project proposal. And budgets. Can't do research without funding, and that's what most grant proposals are for, is asking for funding. And it's very important that you spell out all of the budget requests, and making sure that you do so in a manner that is within the funding agency's requirements. Some of the elements of a budget are going to include personnel, and this may be personnel of the PI or people within their project or their lab or their college. And you always have to look in your RFP and see what's allowable and what's not allowable. And some funding agencies, they will not pay for a faculty member at a university, but they will pay for a research associate or another
postdoc type person.
Postdoc or staff member, even administrative staff members sometimes, but you have to read the request for proposal to see what's allowable and what's not.
And I've been noticing lately that they're actually getting very particular about what type of salary they're going to cover for some of our faculty members. A lot of agencies now will not cover summer support. They'll only cover a faculty member during the academic year. You can't play with that too much anymore because they're very particular and very specific. So make sure before you add someone's summer effort that is allowable and allocable on that project.
And then fringe benefits. You know, at the university, there's a budget template that you have to follow. There's preset fringe benefit rates. There's preset indirect costs. And that's what those research service center directors that we talked about earlier. If you're applying for a grant at UTSA, they'll help you through that. If you're watching this and you're going to be applying for a grant through some other method, you should always talk with the grant administration to find out what those set rates are and what the process is for application. But you always have to build your budget, and it has to be approved by the institution that you're applying for, because at the end of the day, the institution is committing time and money and manpower. Even if it is awarded, the grant doesn't usually pay for 100% of a project. Some of the other items that are going to be reflected in a budget are supplies and materials, equipment. This is another thing that you have to look in your RFP for. Equipment can be anything from a laptop or a handheld computer to a large microscope that costs hundreds of thousands of dollars. So you have to see what the criteria is within the RFP, what's considered equipment and what is not considered equipment, what's allowable and what's not allowable. Travel, it can be domestic or foreign, and it usually has to relate back to the actual project itself. Mm-hmm. That's very important. Subcontracts, sometimes they're allowable and sometimes not. That's where if your institution is awarded funding, that you take a portion of that award and you contract it back out to another institution or agency. So you have to look in the RFP for information on that, as well as with consultants. An example of a consultant that you might have to budget for is if you're going to get a third-party external evaluator to evaluate your project, you might hire somebody from a company outside of UTSA and pay them a portion of the grant funds. But you have to remember, no matter what you do, really put together a strong budget that covers all of the costs as possible, because the last thing that you want to do is write a budget and be awarded a grant that doesn't have enough money to really fund your research project from beginning to end. And make sure that you don't forget fringe or indirect costs. And if you go through a research service center, they're going to make sure those items are there.
And I wanted to add one more thing. In addition to the supplies, the M&O materials, you want to, if you're planning on publishing during that budget period, you want to add publications separately. It's important for the agency to see that you are planning to publish, and those that money can actually add up pretty quickly. Publications nowadays, $3,000. The agency's going to want to see that you are planning to publish. So don't forget to add the publications if it's allowable.
Okay, so we've talked about the planning, the pre-planning before you submit a proposal. We've talked about proposal development, and now a very important factor into whether you get funded or not is whether you understand the peer review process. As in my career, I've written quite a few grants, but I have also sat through the peer review process on several federal funding opportunities. And really, the peer review process is something that if you understand it and you write your grant and your proposal to accommodate the peer reviewer, you stand a greater chance of being funded than a person that does not. And this right here is just a little cartoon that really shows the matter as it is. When you're being peer reviewed, it can be a tough, rough experience from beginning to end, because at times your grants are going to be critically reviewed, and you're going to get comments back that say, you know, what it is that was responsive and what was not within your proposal. And, you know, you spend a lot of hours, sometimes you can spend weeks and weeks putting together a grant proposal, and then it's peer reviewed, and whether you're funded or not funded, to have that critical feedback, it can be rough. But actually, what we've come to find is that it's actually a positive thing, because if you take the peer review process and all of the input and you apply it to each application that you put forward in the future, you're going to just put together stronger proposals over and over. So we're going to talk about the peer review process a little bit. So funders base their reviews and decisions based on specific criteria and priorities. This is going to be in every request for proposal that you read. It's going to tell you really exactly what they want to see. And if you learn to read your request for proposals and you read them over and over, and you make sure you write your grants in the criteria that they give you, you really stand a better chance of being funded. Some examples below. This is what I think the National Institute of Health, they really base their proposals on: significance and effectiveness, feasibility and approach, innovation, impact, sustainability, and capacity. Now those come exactly from the National Institute of Health, but those criteria are going to be seen across the board for all funding agencies. Maybe not in that order, but these are the type of things that they're looking for when they review a proposal. You can really set your application above the rest. Your PI, usually a PI that has been awarded grants in the past will have a lot of input and can help you put together a stronger proposal. So it's always good to have a PI that has won some large awards, either as the head PI or maybe the co-PI. But it's very important that you look to other PIs that have been awarded grant funding in whatever federal agency or private agency you're pursuing funding. Okay, so an example of what a peer review process looks like. Everybody submitted their grants by the deadline, and the federal agency now has 100 proposals, and they have to break them into 10, groups of 10, and they have 10 different peer review groups. A peer review group can be anywhere from 3 to 5 individuals. They're usually subject matter experts in the area that the grant proposal was written to. And these groups are going to be responsible for reviewing a set number of proposals. And they can do this in one of two ways. They can do it remotely, where the proposals are sent electronically or via mail, or two, they can come together in a peer review study section where they're actually brought to the same location to sit in a room and talk over each of these proposals and decide which ones move forward for funding consideration. In many cases, peer reviewers are doing this above and beyond their regular job. And in some subject matters, you can imagine you have a faculty member who is running a lab or a large research program, and they have classes to teach, and then they also do these peer reviews on top. So you can imagine this might be like the end of the day or the last thing that they do with their last bit of energy.
During vacation.
And during vacation, yes. So you can't really control the state of your reviewer, but what you can control is what's in your proposal. So no matter what that peer review group looks like or how tired that peer reviewer may be, you're giving the most responsive proposal possible, so it makes it easy for them to read. You can make sure that you deliver a strong idea, and that abstract, if you capture the peer reviewer's attention with that abstract, they have a greater chance of going into your proposal and reading the full thing with an open mind. And that's where we can't express enough that when you write the abstract, your peer reviewers, they may get 10 proposals and they're going to read 10 abstracts. And if they don't like 3 or 4 of the abstracts, they may never really even read the full proposal. So it's absolutely critical that you write a very strong abstract and that you give them a proposal that's responsive to the criteria that was written in the request for proposal. You want to be clear and concise. And go back to those objectives. You want to make sure that your objectives are clear and understandable so that your peer reviewer knows what you're trying to achieve and how you're going to get there. And you want to make sure that you deliver quality writing. You can't express enough. Grantsmanship is critical, because if it's not well written and punctuation is not in place and it doesn't flow well, your peer reviewer can get irritated very quickly. If they have to go back and forth and search for something that you have to have in there, that's stated that has to be in there, but they can't find it, or they have to search a long time, that can be irritating for a peer reviewer. So if everything's in order and it's well written and they don't have to read it more than once, you really stand a greater chance of being funded than somebody that doesn't put grantsmanship into their proposal. And, at the very end it says, develop the proposal exactly according to the grant guidance. Sometimes it's so clear in the grant guidance, it's numbered, 1 through 20, this is the elements that you have to put in your proposal. And if you put them in that order, it's very easy because much of the time you're scored based on those criteria that they give you. So if it's easy to find and it's in order, you're going to have a higher score. And Raquel, will you speak to this for the NIH grant applications? This is the peer review system for NIH, and Raquel has a strong history with NIH. I'll let her talk about that.
Let me just get this. Okay, so the scientific review group is really it's an independent scientific review. You have folks that actually, they're experts in that area. They evaluate the actual science of it, the merit of it, make sure that it's meaningful, that it's accurate, and they will, they'll recommend the length and the level of funding. That's like the first layer. The second layer is the advisory council, and this is the part that you're on pins and needles. They give you a date. You can actually go into your ERA Commons, and you can see the date that your council is to meet and discuss your application. During that time, they triage what they decide can't go forward, and usually that's because of the abstract. If the abstract's not well read, they will dismiss it right away so they can get on to the other ones. If you're triaged and you're not even reviewed, unfortunately, there's not a whole lot of feedback you can get back. If they are reviewed and they're not triaged, it's a great time. They'll give you a pink sheet back, and usually it is a couple of months. I have to say that lately in the past year, because of the government being, the funding climate being what it is, everything seems much more delayed. Your council date could be in January, and you're not even notified until August if it went forward or not. I see that more and more. You can always keep track of your council date, and you can always, I put all of the grants that we write in a spreadsheet, so I can keep track of what's out and when the council dates are. Once the council comes back with their findings, you get your pink sheet, and then the awards, the final decisions are made after that. So that last piece is actually going through the proposals that were reviewed. I've seen that review process. You could be scored very well by 3 and poorly by 1, and that 1 will have to fight. We'll have to fight, really, really fight for you to get them to even discuss it. So anytime a review panel member is actually reviewing you, they have to be able to stand up and either fight for your proposal or the other way. Explain to the rest of the members why they scored you poorly. So they don't take this lightly. It is a very serious decision. Sometimes it takes a while to be resolved. Sometimes if you've got a couple of folks that scored you a 3 and somebody scored you a 7, they really have to work that out amongst themselves until everybody agrees on funding status or not. That's it.
That's good. Some points to keep in mind. Even though the peer review process may vary amongst federal agencies and even with private sector grants like foundations and nonprofits, there's a review process no matter what, and it's usually written in the request for proposal. So that's why it's very important for you to understand. And if you have questions, you always have a contact agency representative that you can reach out to, and it's good to reach out to them and ask questions. Just make sure that when you do reach out to them that you have your questions well written and well thought through, because they actually, it may seem like even at a federal level it's a big world, but it's not. It's a very small world. Another point to remember with peer review is that the individuals that sit on peer review panels are also usually researchers. So they're going to give your proposal the due consideration If you can get past that initial triage, because that you have that strong abstract, they're going to move forward and read your full proposal. So that's why we can't express enough about the abstract. It's very important. But they know what you're going through because they've been through it themselves, usually as peer reviewers.
One more thing I can add about peer review panels are when you're at a conference and you're presenting your research at any conference you go to, make those connections. Make sure that you're selling your research, because those peer review panels are actually, they consist of the folks that you see at those conferences. And believe it or not, it's a small world, and you can have people on your review panel that may have seen your research at the last conference and really like it, or maybe really not like it. So really reach out and sell your research, sell yourself at those conferences.
And finally, if your proposal's not funded, so you've spent all these hours writing your proposal, you've been through the peer review process. If you're lucky enough and you're not funded and you actually do get comments, take them to heart and apply them to writing the grant again in the following year. Most federal grants have reoccurring or annual or biannual RFPs that are released. And if not for that funding agency, keep your eyes open for another funding agency. But take the comments that were given to heart and apply them to your next proposal. If you get the letter that you were not funded, you reach out to your funding agency contact and you can ask them, some questions of how you can be stronger the next time, above and beyond what you received in comments, when they anticipate this funding opportunity to be released again. It's very good to keep positive interactions, even if you're not awarded. Make friends out of the people at the agencies, because they do remember. And then something that I know that I've experienced in the past is I've gotten that letter over a grant that a lot of people put a lot of time and effort into, and it was said that we were not funded. And then 3 months later, the federal agency found that they had money left over, or someone, maybe somebody didn't actually accept the grant and they had additional funds. And our proposal was awarded high enough that they came back to us and said, we have money, would you still be interested? Mm-hmm. So when you call that funding agency, when you haven't been awarded, do it in a positive manner and keep those relationships open, because you never know, funding might open up and you might be funded.
Don't call them if you're upset. Wait until you've calmed down and have your pen and your paper ready, because more times than not, we have called the agency just to get some feedback, and they have actually given us a list 1 through 10 of the things that the reviewers loved about it, and the things that were challenges, and the things that they actually would make our proposal more competitive the next time, and tell us when that announcement is going to be released again. So,
and it doesn't hurt to have your proposal read before you submit it, or even after, by your peers at the university or from another university. Anybody that can review your proposal at any stage and give you feedback is a good thing. And then at the bottom, there's a Japanese proverb: money grows on the trees of persistence. And this is very true. Grant proposal development and grant writing is a process that you're not always going to win. No grant writer or grant writing team has ever won every proposal that they put forward. So you have to be ready to write some, win some, lose some, and do well with the awards once you have them. If you have any questions, for one, we have resources on our UTSA website that you can go to. This is just a short list at the top, and on the bottom is the full list of proposal development resources. And go to these and check them out, but definitely reach out to Raquel or myself in the Office for Research at any stage of your proposal development process. We're here to help. If we don't have answers, or we don't have a tool or a resource for you, we know a lot of individuals that we can reach out to be of help. So thank you for your time today.